She thumps a cane and drinks champagne. She's formidable and judgmental, but we can guarantee that she's a quintessential Lady D, but recognizes great potential. What would Danbury do?
Welcome to What Would Danbury Do, your guide to Julia Quinn's Bridgerton series from A to V. It's all about love at first sight when a young and dashing nobleman falls head over heels for a very pale wallflower at her family's musicale. But things aren't always what they seem. And also, Yorkshire is very, very far away from London. It's the last of the quartet of the musically questionable Smythe-Smiths cousins, as Iris is swept off her feet and into the secrets of Sir Richard Kensworthy. Don't forget you can find us on Facebook and Twitter as @BridgertonPod and Instagram as @WWDD We'd love for you to tweet us using the hashtag WWDDpod.
Hi, I'm author Laura Lovely, host of the Guilty Pleasure Game Show, part of the Frolic Podcast Network. Just like the 90s, guilt-free pleasure is coming back. On this show, my co-host, Game Master Lindsay Emery, and I quiz your favorite authors, podcasters, and cool creatives about all the things they love, and none of us feel bad about any of it. Come find your next guilty pleasure and the people who will celebrate it with you. Find us at guiltypleasuregameshow.com.
Hi, I'm Rudy.
I'm Kate.
And I'm Adele.
So, Secrets of Sir Richard Kensworthy was published by Avon Books in 2015. The dedication to Paul reads, and also for Paul, even though I still think you should have gone for the Jedi Knighthood. In this last book of the Smythe-Smiths quartet, we finally get Iris's story. Readers may remember Iris as the cellist who can actually play, who gives Sarah some hard truths in The Sum of All Kisses. I remember Iris because I too have super pale eyebrows and eyelashes and empathize deeply with that struggle. The problem is, though, that very few other people ever seem to remember Iris. So it is with shock and not a little skepticism that Iris receives Sir Richard's attentions and his rather intense courtship. Richard needs a bride very, very quickly, so he comes back to London and immediately begins the process of finding one. By chance or by fate, his first event is the Smythe-Smiths musicale, and there he meets Iris, who is not only perfect in terms of parentage and respectable dowry, she is also available. A whirlwind courtship, a little planned compromising situation, and bam, married and on their way to Yorkshire with no issue whatsoever. Except, of course, there is an issue, a big one. A secret, one might even call it. One that Richard has failed to disclose to Iris, one that will have ramifications for the rest of their lives. But this is a romance novel, so don't stress too much. Along the way, we have sisters, and then more sisters, baskets, farmers, and enough everything but to fill a Catholic school sex curriculum. Let's uncover some secrets.
That was half the podcast just there, just in describing the book.
I don't want to say that I'm carrying everybody else, but
You're carrying everybody else.
That's so rude.
Rudy is not used to repercussions.
Cause and effect, my friend. Cause and effect. It's funny, in the first two books, I was so desperate for Hugh's book. I really wanted to read about Hugh. And then that one for me it didn't hit quite as well. And I was like, I switched on to Team Iris. I really wanted to see Iris get her book. So I was excited about this one.
Did it live up to the excitement?
Look, I think it did. The problem I had with this book, which is a very 2021 problem, in that, we got to the big secret reveal, which, sorry, spoilers, but the book is 6 years old. So move on with your lives.
Also, that's kind of the point of this.
Okay. So obviously the reason that Richard needs to be married is because his unmarried younger sister is pregnant and he can't afford to send her away or do any of the things that the, nobility would do with their pregnant unmarried girls otherwise. So he has to get married real fast so that when the baby comes, he can pretend that it's actually his and his new wife's baby. And for me, when that secret was revealed, I was like, well, not that big a secret. Also, it's really silly that you're so worried about primogeniture, and yeah, of course this baby can inherit everything. Like, I don't understand why everybody was so all up in arms about it, which is obviously not the way that I'm supposed to feel, and obviously not also in line with like the very big scandal and problem that this would have been in 1825. So obviously 2021 Kate and 1825 Iris are going to have some differences of opinion in terms of how big a deal this is. But I think I was just when I was reading it, I was like, whatever, it's fine.
I think that also comes from the fact that, like, it cannot be overstated how far the genre has moved. Like, because, like, I was deeply unsurprised to see Iris solve Fleur's problem by, like, marrying her off to the baby's father that she had been lying about. Like, she'd lied and said that it was some guy who had died. And it turns out it's actually, like, a guy that she likes quite a lot, but he's poor, and it would have been a scandal locally. And like now you will come across like so many historical novels where like the sister's secret baby is like barely a problem, and it's because we kind of have been there and done that. Around about the same time that this was released, there's a Tessa Dare book that has effectively the same plot, One Dance with a Duke. And then even, I know that this is like way newer, but Sarah MacLean's 9 Rules to Break, the hero's sister gets pregnant, and it's kind of the catalyst, like it's the reason why the hero, Gabriel, is able to break off his engagement with like an appropriate bride and propose to Callie, who's like the actual heroine of the novel. And then like eventually Gabriel's sister gets her own book in Never Judge a Lady. Never Judge a Lady by her cover? Yeah, which is a whole other series, but it's sort of connected, same universe.
Yeah, you very eloquently pointed out why I was like, oh, that's what we're waiting for. That's the big secret.
Because we've done it. Yeah. We've done it, and we've done it bigger, and we've done it in like more wacky ways. Like,
I have to say though, I did appreciate it as a plot device for keeping sexual tension high and never giving the payoff. Like, it was very useful for the I'm super hot for you, but we can't possibly have P&V sex, so let's get creative about it otherwise. So yeah.
Richard is like determined to not consummate the marriage, because if he does, he might get Iris pregnant, and then he would have 2 babies to kind of try and pass off that might not actually be born at the same time or look all that similar. So we can't even really get away with calling them twins. Like,
it's not even that he doesn't want to consummate the marriage, it's that he doesn't want to impregnate his wife.
Yeah.
So yeah. Yeah, exactly.
I mean, for real, yeah. Well, I think what I was really impressed with was I was so frustrated with Iris and Richard and Fleur and even Marie Claire, but I understood and empathized with everyone's viewpoint.
Mm-hmm.
And that's good writing, right? And I can look at that with the modern gaze, but I could also understand the historical context of it as well. You know, what Fleur wanted to do was pretty modern. So I was, very much empathizing with her. And I just thought there was no right or wrong. There was just this situation that sucked. And I mean, she must have known the solution to create the problem, because I mean, it was actually a pretty simple solution that like basically hinges on the fact that Yorkshire is really far, far away from London. But
which is why I needed to put that in the blurb, because it's a point. I'm just saying.
I am so sorry for taking a dig at your...
I just thought it was really strong writing. I mean, I got really frustrated with like how confused and all the mixed messages Iris was getting. But the frustration as a reader actually played into the frustration of the character. So it actually strengthened it. And in terms, the thing that doesn't quite work for me is we're hearing half the story from Richard's perspective and we don't know what the secret is until it's dropped. And like the thing is, we're in his mind a lot. So it makes no sense that we don't know what's going on.
I actually think this book was incredibly well plotted and crafted. Like, I think Julia Quinn's writing is really charming and her characters are really engaging, which means that she can often get away with being a little bit light on in plots or like leaps of faith that the readers can follow her on because you're enjoying the journey. This one I think was really well plotted and really well crafted because I normally get really pissy too about being in a character's head when they know something that nobody else in the story is supposed to know, but also the reader isn't supposed to know because you have to sort of do some mental gymnastics to never think about it. But I think it worked really well in this story because Richard is not thinking, well, I mean, I think he's so horrified and stressed and worried that his mind just skitters away from that fact at all times. But really, he's so focused the whole time on, I have to get a wife, I have to get a wife, I have to get a wife, that he doesn't ever think, I have to get a wife because he already knows the because. He's just focused on what he has to do next. And it's a little bit shakier when they get up to Yorkshire because, you know, he doesn't necessarily have that single-minded goal to follow. But then he has all of the worry. Like, I actually like my wife. Yeah. My wife is pretty cool. I'm about to fuck her over. I haven't even told her yet. I should really tell her. I'm not going to tell her. I should tell her. I'm not going to tell her. So, you know, like his mind is always focused on a thing that makes sense for his mind to be focused on.
Absolutely.
So I think she actually did that really well. And then the solution to the greater problem, I think you're right. She had to have known it before she went in because I didn't see it coming. I was like, obviously this is a romance novel and things are going to be sorted out and everything will be fine. And obviously Iris is going to do the solving because she and Fleur have like flower power name immediate like compatibility. So if like it's very possible that someone else could have come up with the solution if Fleur had trusted someone else enough to tell them the truth earlier on. But because they didn't have the shared flower name, she was like, no, can't possibly. And then Iris shows up and she's like, flower name, we are immediate, you know, intimates. And then, and then Iris solved the problem with reasonable ease after that. But it was well crafted and well plotted in a way that Julie Quinn doesn't always put that effort into. So I enjoyed it on that level.
I love that conversation between Fleur and Iris where all the cards are on the table. I think it's such a powerful scene, actually. Also because we know Iris is incredibly pragmatic. And we know Fleur is currently quite emotional, maybe a little despondent, and quite angry, all for valid reasons. So it makes for a really good dynamic. And it sort of makes sense that Iris could cut through all that and see potential.
This is the first book in the quartet where we don't start in the same prologue as we have every other time, which we had wondered whether we do still experience a lot of scenes that we have encountered already now from different perspectives. So like we are experiencing the infamous Henry VIII and the Unicorn play. I will never tire of that. Like you could write that from like literally every audience member's perspective, and I would read it.
But also the mental picture of a superglued, overweighted horn to a child's head. Oh my God, it's just this quartet is so much more, I guess, cinematic in comparison to the Bridgerton series. Like there's the way it's structured actually has a lot more potential for a series. But anyway, move along.
I guess the other big kind of scene for me was Iris talking about the conversation that she had with Sarah where she called Sarah selfish. And I was like, oh, I really didn't think that you got that mad or invested in that combo. But to hear her talk about it, this is like her big kind of blow up moment. I was like, that's interesting. That's some creative retelling. Unless, like, the way that she blows up at people might actually be very quiet. When she gets the shits and decides that she is going to follow through on Richard's plan, like, she disappears for like 3 days and then suddenly appears at breakfast, has almost nothing to eat, declares herself in a delicate condition, and then leaves again. And that's her, like, big emotional blow up.
It's such a passive-aggressive breakfast. It was perfect. I loved every minute of it.
Oh my God, there's just so many moments like that that are so well done and so character rich. Yeah.
Well, I mean, Iris is a Penelope, right?
Right down to, like, the part that crushes me every time is when she's incessantly asking, why did you marry me? And he keeps saying, like, well, I compromised you. And she's like, that's not the answer. You know that's not the answer. Why me? And she just wants him to admit that he thought she was pathetic. She believes that of herself sometimes. And she believes that other people see that of her.
And it's also for him, like, he never really thinks of her that way. Like, from the moment he sort of gets transfixed by her, he's never really considered her desperate or any of those things. So it's having to admit something that hasn't been his truth.
I think it's a little bit his truth. Not desperate, perhaps, but, like, certainly not somebody in a strong enough... Yeah. Certainly not somebody in a position strong enough to refuse a reasonable marriage proposal.
Well, what he thinks is, like, he has when he sets out for London, he has these thoughts about he does want someone who is desperate, who is, like, a bit pathetic, who will be grateful for this really, like, fucking awful deal, actually. And then when he has to apply that thinking to a specific person, to Iris, that's not who he sees. Like,
I think it's also, to be fair to Richard, I don't think that whoever he chose, he would apply that to either. Like, I don't think so either. Genuinely a reasonably kind person who genuinely wants to help his family and is doing it the only way he can think of. So, of course, like, in his plans, it's like somebody desperate, but the second that he actually meets somebody and puts their, puts them in front of them, then I think that sort of, it's his mind skittering away. He's got a skittery mind.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and yet he's completely in the vein of Quinn heroes in that they get so stubbornly fixed to what is going to happen that, like, they don't even think about the nuance of it. They just blunder ahead stubbornly.
I think you're right. Like, I think that if he actually encountered somebody who truly fit the description of what he said he was looking for, he wouldn't actually, like, spend time with them long enough to be able to go through with his plan, because he does kind of want to like his wife, and the person he's describing is not someone he would like.
Yeah, it's interesting actually, because he does want to like his wife, and he likes Iris almost immediately, but it's strange that he does want to like his wife, because he's basically setting himself up as a sacrifice for his younger sister. So he's sacrificing any sort of potential happiness for his relationship. So you would think that he would genuinely not want to like his wife, so that it wouldn't matter when they were torn apart by this secret, and by, her bloodline not getting any look in on whatever entailment comes with the baronet and everything. So it's funny that he wants to like his wife, when, for all intents and purposes, if he didn't like her, then it wouldn't be such a big deal.
Oh my God. I'm just thinking about how sincerely he parallels Anthony, who is wanting to marry someone who he doesn't like, so it won't be a big deal. Wow.
When he dies.
He foils. He's like a foil to Anthony.
Yeah.
Because he has a similar plan. He just wants to like her. While knowing that it's doomed.
Well, knowing that it's doomed, that's exactly right. Like, he knows from the get-go that whatever that, taking on his sister's child is going to ruin that relationship. Like, asking his wife to do that is so unfair as to be unforgivable.
This feels like it got stronger with every book. Like, I really enjoyed book 3 and 4. I felt like it's a really nice conclusion to the series.
I think a lot of people, not just Julia Quinn, have been intrigued by the cellist from the Smythe-Smiths quartet for a very long time. Like, this book kind of had to be the standout. Otherwise, what was the point in doing a quartet?
Yeah. Look, I love the sister dynamic too. In some respects, it's a bit like Eloise, like taking two young children, which they're not really, the teenagers, into hand. But I did like the Fleur and Marie Claire like stuff, because it's frustrating and you get furious with them, but like it plays pretty true. Like, teenage sisters are hell on wheels.
Well, and I
even
think
if you don't have a pregnancy.
Yeah, I think it plays really well with Fleur, and that she's, well, I mean, like Richard, Fleur has a fixation. She's like, it's fine, I'll just go and be a widow, and she just doesn't understand. She doesn't understand the finances. I mean, obviously, because nobody's telling her about it either. Because as a woman, she couldn't possibly worry her pretty little head around sums and figures and things like that. But also, it's like it's a genuinely stressful and tricky situation. And I think, as you said, Adele, all of the characters play true to how they would be in a genuinely tricky and stressful situation at that time. Even though I was like, whatever, unplanned pregnancy. It's totally cool.
I think the thing, like you said this early on, Kate, is like Richard is a good human being. His first instinct was to keep the baby by like using himself as a sacrificial lamb, but to keep the baby in the family. So, I mean, props.
Well, and also not abuse his power. Like, I know that Fleur doesn't want to give up her baby, but I mean, he was very well within his right and ability to just lock her up somewhere and take the baby away. And that was obviously not a thing he was going to do. So, even though he was absolutely panicked with worry, he was still respecting Fleur's autonomy as a person. So, genuinely good person, did a probably not well thought through thing.
Was anyone else deeply uncomfortable when Iris started talking about birthrights and what her child would get versus this other child? I'm like, I get it, but ick.
It's one of those things where, like, yes, it's gross, but it also adds stakes. Like, it really would have taken the teeth out of it if that wasn't a consideration. I think also I just read too many romance novels to, like, really, I don't know. I'm trying to figure this out. Like, I just think that inherited wealth is, like, a little bit fake. Like, I'm not expecting to inherit anything from my parents. And, like, unbothered.
Yeah.
That's so weird, because I had that conversation with my mum 2 days ago, and she's like saying stuff, and I'm like, Mum, I have no expectations. Spend it on yourself. Like,
I guess the point is that it does matter, actually, and it can be important.
Yeah, because one of the things that he says is that, like, oh, I'll split up the estate. And Iris quite sensibly points out, like, oh, okay, so, like, someone's going to get the orangery and someone's going to get the house. Like, what does splitting up the estate really mean? Like, if you're going to raise a child as your child and then snub them in the will, what do you think you're doing there?
Well, and presumably they would never tell the child, right? So in order for it to work, the child would have to think that they were the firstborn child and thus the natural heir to everything. And then you have your dad being like, look, no, in fact, we're not going to do that. Like, yeah, that would be, like, there's no therapy in 1825 that's useful to help work through your feelings. So
there's just
wenching.
There's just growing up to be Gareth. That's what there is. Gareth St. Clair. And then you're like, fuck. But it's more complex because you liked your dad.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I guess Richard could have just hoped that they had girls.
Yeah.
Even then, though.
But I did like the point that, you know, Richard's father, they loved him, but he was terrible at the, like, operational side of...
He was careless.
But there was, like, a contradiction, like, a good person, but then not good enough to, like, secure the financial, you know, future for his family. And I really liked that juxtaposition quite a lot. I kind of wish it'd been played into a little bit more, but it really does explain a lot of Richard's motivations of being a good person, but also being fiscally responsible.
Yeah.
It's so boring, but it's so important.
Yeah. That's it. Like, his dad was a good person, but not good enough to force himself to do something he didn't want to do.
It sort of explains Fleur's behavior too, don't you think? I mean, like, she's 18 and has, like, just enough money and power to get herself into some trouble. But, like, I think also the fact that these are the kind of, like, it's the kind of behavior that was being modeled at home was, like, do what you wanted to do and damn the consequences.
But even for her to have developed a relationship with Farmer John, that's not his name.
I think his name is John.
John?
I'm pretty sure it is Farmer John.
They grow up together on those kinds of estates, but to, like, even sleep with him in that time and be in the land, like, it's, like, so risky even that. How did she even know what to do? I guess it's a farm. But anyway.
It's a farm.
I mean, because Iris had to have another bad, like, wedding night talk. But apparently Fleur knew what to do.
Well, I mean, Fleur would have had John telling her what to do, right? At least Iris had Sarah come in afterwards and be like, ignore what your mom said. Like, no, it doesn't have to be like that. Which is, I think, is nice for the next generation of Smythe-Smiths. Like, you have the lay back and think of England generation, and then you have the, no, actually, we have some creative husbands who care about us.
Kate, I think you'll find it's lay back and think of the household accounts.
Right.
Think of all the things you need to do.
Make your grocery list.
Why is Julia Quinn is so fixed on giving, like, mums giving terrible sex intros?
It always irritates me. But I think the sting is, even for someone like me, the sting is supposed to come out of it because you, us as a reader, supposed to know that it's fine. The hero of the book will be, like, caring, considerate, good at sex, interested in foreplay, interested in her pleasure, right? So, like, it's a safe laugh, even when it is, like, deeply disconcerting if this was, like, the actual real, if you didn't know it was a romance novel, deeply disconcerting.
Yeah, you don't want to think about what it would be like in reality in that time at all. No.
But yeah, I still hate it, but I was thinking about it more.
I'd forgotten about the household accounts thing, and now I am delighted all over again, and finding it very hard not to laugh.
Can I tell you the one bit that made me, like, I had to actually, like, pause because I was laughing too much, was we get another Sarah Gawley book, and, like, Richard quite, like, insists on having some of it read to him, and then he's not enjoying it, and there is a conversation about an evil archer being shot, and he's like, well, that's not very creative. And Iris is like, oh, well, he was shot by a dog, though.
So good. Oh.
Like, I lost it.
losing it. I don't think that we spent quite enough time on Henry VIII and the Unicorn, because I had one of those situations where I was reading and then I was crying, and so I stopped reading to calm down, and then like started reading again. I was immediately swept up into the same situation. It was just so well done. And the like the idea of, I can't remember which of the sisters has to wear the unicorn, but like just the unicorn horn is too heavy, so she has to walk with her head sort of down all the time, and then eventually gets stuck in Henry VIII.
Little Francis?
Francis, it's Francis. That's right. Yeah. Of course it is.
And also because the horn is not supposed to be stuck on as hard as it has been. So when she charges Henry VIII, it's supposed to come off during that fight. And it didn't.
Oh, so good.
It's ridiculous. Oh, if there was any reason to read these books, it's I
love that Iris is really smart, and Richard loves that about her. Like, she admits to reading the marriage contract because she wanted to know what she was getting herself in for, which I love. And at one point, she talks about like maybe she should write a book with all the time that she has. He says you shouldn't use your own name, and she's like, "Oh, you'd be ashamed of me." And he's like, "No, because we want our privacy," because he just assumed she would be wildly successful at it and be really famous. And it's just such there's some choices that I really, really love. I like Iris.
I do like Iris as well. Yeah, absolutely. And looking through the book,
I feel like Iris could fit in my friendship group. This was a great book. I don't actually have much more to talk about it. I don't think.
Do we have the Featheringtons?
At one point, there's a section of the book where Iris and Marie Claire have a lot to do with each other as Marie Claire reveals some vital information that allows Iris to work out who the true parentage of Fleur's baby is. But at one point, she's so frustrated with Marie Claire, she threatens to club her with a cricket bat. And like Marie Claire's reaction is like, does my brother know you're this violent? But it's also, the word used is with a reverential touch. I'm like, what does it say about Marie Claire?
I'm just thinking of her and Harriet and Daisy and Frances. Oh, they would be like...
It's a lot. It's a lot.
Yep.
But you know what? That would make for a great collection of short stories.
I don't disagree. In fact, I agree rather wholeheartedly about that.
Because you couldn't do a whole book of any one of those characters. Yeah. It'd be too much.
Kate, do you have a What the Featherington?
I don't have a What the Featherington, but I do have the pages of the Henry VIII and the Unicorn play, in case anybody just wants to read that part. Yes. It starts on page 77 and it goes to about page, I think it's 98, when poor Frances has to run off with her too heavy iron unicorn horn in both hands, holding it up so she can actually move. And it's delightful on every level.
So my What the Featherington is just that, like, it shocked me a little bit, was that Iris is good at playing the cello, but she does not enjoy it. And I was like, what? One of the first things she talks about being pleased about being married is not just that she doesn't have to perform anymore, it's that she doesn't have to even practice. She does not like playing the cello. I was like, wow.
Well, I mean,
my whole life is a lie.
Iris, she didn't really have an opportunity to ever like playing the cello because even if she enjoyed it, like having to practice for the musicale and knowing just how not as talented her cousins were, it would have taken all of the enjoyment out of it.
And the public spectacle of it as well.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know.
But she probably didn't choose it though either. They would have just been told what instrument they're doing depending on need.
I guess I just find it fascinating to hear about people who are good at something but don't like it. And
I think it happens way more than people think.
Yeah, I guess.
You think because you're good at something, that should be what you pursue. And I'm
Isn't
sure
that
you're good
the whole plot line of Center Stage?
You're right.
Yeah.
Iris doesn't have the heart; she just has the fingers. And Maureen doesn't have the heart; she just has the feet.
You're so wow.
This is why I have a literature degree, friends, for this level of intertextuality. Yeah.
And everyone knows Center Stage.
They don't. Then why are you listening to us? Go stop the podcast and go and watch it immediately.
And then ask yourself, why is it about this white girl with bad feet and not the black girl who is actually perfect but keeps getting overlooked?
Next episode, we're going to deep dive into Center Stage as an important companion piece to The Secrets of Sir Richard Kensworthy.
You joke, but I would do that.
We're still supposed to do our Brendan Fraser revival.
Oh, absolutely. Bless that man. Bless that man.
Companion pieces to the Bridgerton. Other podcasts do like musical playlists. We'll just do what movies you should watch for the same feels.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do we have any more DTFs? WTFs?
I can't think of any. That was mine. That
It's
and the
pretty
dog
good.
that shot the archer.
The dog that shot the
It was so good.
Fuck, man, I desperately want to read that book. Like, it bums me out. Like, do you reckon she'll ever actually write them? Like, write them? I know there was going to be the comic. I don't vibe with comics. I just want the books.
Have you ever looked on AO3? Maybe there's something on AO3.
I haven't. Because I want these. I want what everyone in the book is reading.
I've got to make a confession.
Go on. Tell me you hate them.
I skipped all of them.
Of course you do.
I did read the dog bit because it was dialogue, but yeah, it doesn't matter to the plot, so I just brush over them.
It matters
that
deeply
interested.
to the plot. It's character.
I mean, I've done it all along. So
Well, when they finally do get published, they'll all be complete surprises to you, whereas the rest of us will just be holding out for the pigeon pecking scene.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember that bit, and I do remember the cliff stuff. But yeah, I think I've just tuned out at some point because this doesn't have anything to do with the plot of the book I'm actually reading.
Speaking of things that don't have anything to do with the plot, I did actually spend a little bit of time thinking about how a dog would be able to shoot an archer in the head, and I think it would have to be a crossbow. Like, I don't think that there's really any real way that a dog could manage like just a normal bow and arrow, but with a crossbow, there's a possibility.
Yeah, a compound bow, most definitely, probably.
But what if?
I mean, I did see a headline about a man that taught his dogs to pilot a plane, so surely a dog can shoot someone.
But I mean, dogs would never on purpose.
Oh, I don't know. Some of them are very salty.
Yeah, no.
Also, this was an assassin. So, like,
Oh, well, maybe. Okay, I see your
maybe
point.
the dog was protecting somebody.
And the dog, with all its canine wisdom, realized that the lesser of two evils was taking out the assassin.
Yeah.
I imagine that he would feel very guilty about it for the rest of his life, though.
I think he did.
Yeah. All right. Should we move on?
Yes.
All right. So now it's time for...
What would Danbury do?
This is where we imagine that our Dame Dragon, Lady Danbury, receives a missive from another book character asking for her frank advice. Today we have a letter from Ashton from Alexis Daria's You Had Me at Ola.
Dear Lady Danbury, I've recently joined the cast of a new telenovela after my character on my last show was unceremoniously killed off. It's a great chance to stretch my skills in front of a new audience and put me on the radar of Hollywood casting agents. And it doesn't hurt that despite a bit of a rocky start with my co-star Jasmine, together we're generating some serious heat on and off screen. The problem is, I have a son that only my inner circle of people know about. And I'm worried about what will happen if Jasmine finds out about my boy. But I don't know if we can have a real relationship when such a large part of my life is kept hidden. What would Danbury do?
Yeah, that's tricky, actually. It's interesting because, like, there are real ramifications. And sort of at what point does intimacy and privacy become counterproductive to each other? And that's going to be different for everybody,
when does it
right?
become withholding? Yeah.
Yeah. I think the fact that Ashton is now worried about it means that it is time. Like, if you're worried about not telling her because you think that, because you feel like you're withholding something from her, then I think you've reached the part of the relationship where you're like, no, actually it's time now, because you're obviously important enough that I care about your feelings about the situation, that I'm obviously deep enough that I trust you to think about it, that now's the time. And like, if Jasmine's at all reasonable, she's going to understand. Yeah, of course you keep your kid private. And Jasmine's going to know what the crazy world is like. She might be butthurt for like a minute, but if she's reasonable, she'll be like, no, actually, you know what?
Yeah.
Your privacy and your kid's privacy is more important than my butthurtedness.
Yeah, I think Kate's advice is bang on. And I think Lady Danbury would say you should always protect your children.
It's funny. It reminds me a little bit of it. So my husband is in the Air Force, and the rule for the Air Force is if your relationship is important, then you have to tell them about it because it's a security risk. But that's the rule. Like, when it becomes important, we want to know about it. And I always thought that was such a non-bureaucratic way of dealing with this sort of thing, but also a really straightforward way of dealing with it as well. When it's important, then you should tell us because it becomes, a consideration in terms of security.
I've just imagined a whole heap of listeners turning to their partner who might be in the Air Force and go, have you declared me as a very important person? Have you? What have you done, Kate?
Yeah, sorry. For me, I think my husband waited about 2 weeks. So
that tracks. He knew what he wanted. He wanted the best. He nailed down the best.
But yeah, and I think what the point that you made, Adele, is really strong as well. Like, you have to have a really practical conversation, but you also have to be like, I've let you into the circle of trust. And these are my expectations for you being in that circle as well. So
yeah, they're non-negotiables. Like,
yeah,
they are.
Yeah, exactly.
Why did you want to recommend this book, Rudy?
I hadn't got to that point yet. I was pausing thoughtfully.
I can.
All right, up you go.
Hey, Rudy. Why did you recommend You Had Me at Ola?
So I wanted to find a book that had a secret child dynamic. Obviously this. But You Had Me at Ola was just like, it was a really fun contemporary romance that I picked up recently. So I kind of got a bit lucky in like, I was reading this already, and I realized today that I have actually read Alexis Daria before, but the other series I had read of hers was Dancing with the Stars kind of reality show series, and I found it really, really difficult to read the dance scenes. So
Right.
I didn't actually rate it as a book. It was like I could tell it was good, but I just find it really boring to listen to people talk about dance. Like, and I find it exceptionally boring in books. So, and then I read this and I was like, oh, no, it really is just that I don't like reading dance. But yeah, so You Had Me at Ola is like, it's sweet, it's a little bit sexy, it's very fun,
It's spicy.
and very like
Yeah.
dynamic. If you enjoyed shows like Jane the Virgin and Ugly Betty, One Day at a Time, like it's very aware of those as reference points for a lot of people, and it gives you like a bit of that to kind of, I guess, hold the hands of people that are like a little bit new. Which I liked, I appreciated.
That's all for this episode and season of What Would Danbury Do? Originally, we planned to do a little recap of the season, but Rudy fell behind in her editing, so the new season of Netflix's Bridgerton is almost upon us. And frankly, at the rate Rudy's editing, if we don't start recording our recap episode like now, you might not hear them until 2023. Don't stress, friends. Rudy wrote all this herself and is forcing me to be the voice of accountability. In the meantime, you can find us on Twitter and Facebook as @BridgertonPod and Instagram as @WWDD or send us an email at bridgertonpod@gmail.com. This episode was recorded on the traditional and unceded land of the Gadigal, Wurundjeri and Bunurong people and edited by the disgustingly busy but very dedicated audio producer Rudy Bremer on Gadigal country. Thanks for listening, and remember, WWDD. What Would Danbury Do is part of the Frolic Podcast Network. Find more podcasts you'll love at frolic.media/podcasts.